Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever met someone who acted like losing you meant nothing, cold, distant, untouched, but deep down, you knew they were breaking in silence? They put on a show for the world, pretending they've moved on, but behind closed doors, the weight of your absence is suffocating them. The truth is, they didn't lose just you, they lost the only person who ever saw them, loved them, and believed in them when no one else did. And no matter how cold they act now, that loss will haunt them in ways they'll never admit. And ladies and gentlemen, have you ever seen someone act like they don't care, only to realize later that the silence they left behind was their undoing? That the same person who once seemed untouchable, indifferent, and cold was quietly breaking on the inside because of what they lost. There's something almost tragic about how pride can disguise pain, how ego can silence emotion, and how someone can pretend they're fine while their heart is quietly falling apart. And he acted cold, he acted like you didn't matter, like your absence didn't faze him. Like he had already moved on, already replaced the connection, already built a wall high enough that nothing could reach him. But here's the truth he would never say out loud: losing you broke something in him that he didn't even know was fragile. Because it's easy to act strong when you still have someone who loves you. It's easy to be detached when someone's still trying. But when you finally walk away, when your silence replaces your effort, that's when reality hits. That's when all the pretending in the world can't drown out the ache of knowing you were the one who cared, and he was the one who ruined it. And people don't realize how powerful absence is. Presence is comforting, but absence is haunting. When you were there, he took it for granted. Your texts, your laughter, your energy, the way you made him feel seen, all of that was background noise to him. But when it stopped, when the notifications disappeared, when the laughter turned to silence, suddenly he had to face himself. And that's the moment his world began to quiet, not in peace, but in emptiness. And he acted cold because caring meant vulnerability. It meant admitting that you mattered more than his pride. So he built walls, made himself look detached, acted like nothing touched him. But inside, every memory was a reminder of what he couldn't admit, that your love was rare, your effort was pure, and your absence is louder than any words he could ever say. He's not going to tell anyone that he misses you. He's not going to confess that he checks his phone hoping your name appears. He'll post pictures that look carefree, he'll laugh louder than before, he'll talk to people as if his heart's fine. But the silence of losing you echoes in every empty room he walks into. And you see, when someone like you walks away, it's not just a loss, it's a wake-up call. Because he thought love would always be there, that you would always stay, that you would always try one more time. He got used to your forgiveness, used to your effort, used to your soft heart doing the work his pride never could. But you finally reached a point where peace meant more than proving your worth. You chose yourself. And that was the moment his power disappeared. Because power is only real when someone gives it to you, and you stopped giving it. And now he's learning in silence what he refused to hear when you were speaking. He's learning that attention isn't love. That connection can't be replaced by convenience. That you can't fill the space of someone who saw your soul with people who only see your surface. He's realizing that coldness might protect your ego, but it destroys your heart. And when the lights go out, when the noise fades, and it's just him and his thoughts, he's facing the truth that losing you wasn't just a breakup. It was a collapse of everything he didn't appreciate when he had it. And you need to understand something. Your absence taught him more than your presence ever could. He's finally realizing what it means to be valued, but he's learning it through loss. You became the mirror he never wanted to face. Every good memory now hurts. Every small thing that used to annoy him now makes him ache. The same laugh he once rolled his eyes at. He now plays in his head, trying to remember the sound. The same touch he once pulled away from. He now craves when nights feel colder than usual. That's the irony of acting cold. You freeze out the person who loved you until you end up freezing alone. And he doesn't tell anyone, but there's a part of him that replays everything. The way you looked at him when you were trying to make things work. The moments he pushed you away, pretending he didn't care. The times he made you feel small just to feel powerful. And every time those memories come back, there's a sting of regret that hits deeper than he's ready to admit. Because deep down, he knows you were the one who gave without keeping score, the one who showed up, the one who stayed longer than you should have, and the one who loved him in a way he didn't even know how to love himself. And now he walks through life wearing that mask, the same cold, composed, I'm fine mask, but silence doesn't mean peace. It means there's a storm inside that no one sees, and that storm is the cost of losing someone like you. He may never say it, but every time he scrolls through your photos or hears your name, there's a flicker of pain that no amount of pretending can erase. Because you can't act cold forever. Eventually, emotions catch up. And that's the thing, the people who act the coldest are often the ones who feel the most. They just bury it under control, under ego, under the illusion that detachment equals strength. But true strength isn't in pretending not to care. It's in being vulnerable enough to love fully and still be okay if it doesn't work out. He missed that lesson when you were trying to show it to him. He thought he was protecting himself, but all he did was build a cage around his own heart, and he thought losing you meant freedom. That he could breathe again, that life would be lighter without the weight of emotion. But freedom without connection is just loneliness dressed up as independence. And now he's realizing that being cold might keep you safe from getting hurt, but it also keeps you from being loved. Because love isn't logical. It's messy, it's unpredictable, it's vulnerable, and he traded all of that for the illusion of control. And you, on the other hand, became stronger, because walking away from someone you love isn't weakness, it's power. You stopped chasing explanations and started protecting your peace. You stopped proving your worth to someone who couldn't see it. And in doing so, you reminded him, and maybe even yourself, that real love doesn't beg to be chosen. It stands tall even when it's unreciprocated, and so yes, he acted cold, but losing you broke him in ways he'll never admit. And one day, long after you've healed, long after you've found joy again, he'll still think about you. Not because he wants to go back, but because you'll always be the moment he realized what love truly feels like right before he lost it. And that quiet, invisible heartbreak will follow him, not as punishment, but as a reminder of what happens when pride speaks louder than love. And in every time he catches a glimpse of someone who even slightly reminds him of you, a familiar laugh, a tone of voice, a look in their eyes, there's this ache that rises in his chest before he can suppress it. It's not just nostalgia, it's recognition. It's the silent acknowledgement that he let something extraordinary slip through his fingers while convincing himself it wasn't worth holding on to. The truth is, people rarely recognize love in the moment. They recognize it in the silence that follows its absence. And that silence becomes deafening when they realize no one else speaks the same emotional language you did. And now he scrolls through the moments of his life, trying to fill the gaps. Nights out, conversations that don't go deep, temporary distractions that feel empty the second they end. Because no matter how much he tries to bury it, the space you left doesn't get filled by noise or faces. It lingers, it hums in the background, reminding him that connection isn't something you can replace. It's something you build. And the one he built with you wasn't fragile, it was real. It was imperfect but rare, and he's only now realizing that real doesn't always come twice. And what breaks him quietly isn't just that you're gone, but that you're thriving, that you found peace after pain. That you rebuilt yourself from the same pieces he once scattered. He watches you, maybe from afar, maybe through the filtered glow of a screen, and he sees strength where he once saw softness. That same energy he once took for granted now radiates independence, confidence, and self-respect, and though he might not say it, a part of him admires you for it. Because deep down, he knows he never had that kind of courage, the courage to walk away from something that wasn't growing anymore, even when it hurt. And it's strange, isn't it, the way people mistake silence for indifference. He thought your quiet was just another attempt to get his attention, another phase you'd snap out of. But this time, your silence wasn't strategy, it was healing. It was the sound of your boundaries being built. It was the moment you stopped trying to make someone see your worth and started seeing it for yourself. You stopped talking to be understood and started listening to your own peace. And in doing so, you gave him the one thing he never expected, the absence that forced him to finally listen. And now he replays moments he dismissed before, the way your eyes softened when you forgave him one more time. The way your voice broke slightly when you said you were fine, even though you weren't. The way you still showed up with love, even when he gave you reasons not to. Those moments haunt him now because he realizes that love doesn't always look grand. Sometimes it looks like quiet patience, soft understanding, and staying when no one else would. And he realizes too late that your patience wasn't weakness, it was strength. Because it takes courage to love someone deeply in a world that glorifies detachment. And he thought he was teaching you a lesson by pulling away, by acting unbothered, by showing that he didn't need you. But life has a way of turning those lessons around. Now he's the one learning. He's learning what it feels like to crave a love that no longer answers. He's learning how silence can say everything words never could. He's learning that coldness doesn't protect you, it isolates you. And that pretending not to care only works until you realize the person who stopped caring back was your anchor all along. And you might never know how many times he's typed your name into his phone and erased it before sending. How many nights he's stared at old photos, caught between pride and longing. How often he's wanted to reach out just to feel that sense of connection again, even if it's only for a moment. But pride is a stubborn thing. It makes people stay silent even when their heart is screaming. So he chooses to suffer quietly, to wear his detachment like armor, hoping the world doesn't notice the cracks. But the cracks are there. They show up in the way he looks at people now, guarded but searching. They show up in the way he talks about love, always with cynicism, as if distancing himself from it makes it hurt less. They show up when someone new cares too much and he pulls away not because he doesn't want it, but because he's terrified of repeating the same mistake. Because losing you made him realize that love doesn't just walk away. It leaves echoes that never stop reminding you of what could have been if you'd only shown up differently. And maybe, deep down, there's a part of him that wishes you'd stayed, that you'd given him one more chance to figure it out. But you didn't, you couldn't, because love without respect is exhaustion. Love without growth is slow destruction. And you reached the point where loving him cost you too much of yourself. Walking away wasn't just about leaving him, it was about choosing you. It was about ending a cycle that kept you small, and that's the power he never saw coming, the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't announce revenge or bitterness, but simply moves on. That's what truly broke him, realizing he couldn't reach you anymore, not because you blocked him, but because you healed. And he sees it now, the difference between attention and effort, between affection and consistency. He used to think love was about grand gestures, about moments of passion that burn bright and fade fast. But he's learning that love is in the small things. It's in showing up. It's in the text you send after an argument. It's in remembering how someone likes their coffee. It's in not walking away every time things get hard. He had all of that with you, and he let it slip through his fingers because he thought being cold made him stronger. But all it did was leave him alone in a room full of regrets, and there's something deeply human about losing someone who truly saw you. When you were with him, you saw the parts he hid from everyone else, the doubts, the fears, the insecurities. You didn't fall for the mask, you loved the person underneath it, and that's why it hurts him so much now. Because no matter how many people come after you, they only ever meet the mask. You met the man behind it, and you still loved him. That kind of acceptance doesn't come around often, and once it's gone, it leaves a shadow. And he'll go on, of course. He'll laugh again, date again, maybe even say he's fine. But there will always be a moment, a song, a scent, a place that pulls him back to you. And in that moment, he'll feel it all again, the warmth, the connection, the loss. He'll remember the way you made him feel safe in his own skin, the way your presence made ordinary moments feel sacred. And that's when it will hit him all over again, that the coldness he wore as armor became the reason he lost the only person who ever made him feel alive. And while he's learning this in silence, you're finally free. You're no longer waiting for an apology that never comes, no longer clinging to the hope that he'll change. You've stepped into a version of yourself that doesn't chase closure, you create it. You've realized that love isn't about fixing someone, it's about growing together. And if one person refuses to grow, the other must keep walking. That's where your strength lies, not in staying, but in knowing when to stop trying. And maybe one day, when he finally understands the depth of what he lost, he'll find the courage to be different with someone else. But he'll always carry the imprint of what he learned from you, that love is a choice, not a convenience. That affection without accountability is empty, and that the cold act he wore so proudly came with a cost he can never undo. And he won't say it out loud, but losing you became the mirror he couldn't escape. It showed him the truth about who he was, and who he could have been if he hadn't let fear run the show. It's not that he didn't love you, it's that he didn't know how to love you the way you needed. And by the time he figured it out, you were gone. That's what broke him silently, not just the loss of you, but the realization that he was his own downfall. And that realization will follow him quietly, long after your name stops echoing in his mind, long after the world believes he's moved on. Because some lessons don't fade, they stay, etched in the spaces where love once lived. And sometimes late at night, when the world goes quiet and the noise fades, that's when it hits him the hardest. The weight of everything unsaid, the memories he thought he had buried come back to life, not to haunt him, but to remind him of what real love felt like. He tries to brush it off, tries to convince himself it's just nostalgia. But deep down he knows it's not. It's regret. It's the recognition that no one else has been able to reach him the way you did. And that realization is the kind that doesn't scream, it whispers. It whispers every time he's surrounded by people yet feels alone. It whispers every time someone new says all the right words, but none of them feel right. And he starts to understand that you can't just replace connection with distraction. You can't heal by pretending you're fine. You can't move on when you haven't made peace with the way you left things. And no matter how much he tries to numb it, there's always that pull, the quiet tug of memory that reminds him he once had something real. Something he didn't value because it felt too stable, too kind, too patient. But now he craves that same stability. He misses the safety he once called boring. He misses the peace he once mistook for weakness. That's what happens when people lose something genuine. They go out searching for excitement, and then spend the rest of their lives longing for calm. And every time he sees you smiling, it cuts a little deeper. Not out of bitterness, but out of realization. Because your smile now holds a kind of freedom he never gave you, you glow differently now, not because someone else replaced him, but because you finally filled your own empty spaces. You've learned to love yourself in the ways you once tried to teach him to love you. That's a power no one can take away. And watching you embody that kind of strength forces him to face the truth he's been avoiding, that you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. And he remembers the arguments, the moments when you tried to express your needs, the times you said you felt unseen. Back then, he told himself you were being emotional, dramatic, too sensitive. Now he understands that you were simply trying to communicate your heart in a language he refused to learn. And it's a cruel irony, the very emotions he dismissed are now the ones that keep him awake at night. Because the moment you walked away, everything he used to find overwhelming became the silence he now longs for. The texts he once ignored, he now rereads. The words he once brushed off, he now replays, trying to understand where he went wrong. And the truth is, he didn't lose you in one big moment. He lost you slowly, piece by piece, every time he made you feel like your love was an inconvenience. Every time he acted indifferent when all you needed was reassurance. Every time he turned away instead of turning toward you. That's how love dies, not with a loud explosion, but with quiet neglect. And the cruelest part is that he didn't even notice it was ending until it was already gone. And now he's the one trying to fill the silence. He turns to friends, to work, to anything that can keep him from sitting with his thoughts too long. But deep down, he knows what's missing. He knows that the laughter of others doesn't feel the same. That the comfort of temporary company never matches the warmth of genuine connection. He knows that no matter how many new people enter his life, there will always be a piece of him reserved for what he lost. Not because he's stuck, but because some loves are simply unforgettable. They mark you, they shape you, they become part of your story whether you admit it or not. And maybe, on some level, he understands that this is what growth feels like, not glamorous, not easy, but necessary. Because losing someone like you doesn't just leave a void, it forces you to face your own reflection. It forces you to ask yourself why you pushed away the very thing you were searching for. It makes you realize that love isn't about control, it's about surrender. And he spent so much time building walls that he forgot that real connection requires vulnerability. You can't be loved for who you truly are if you never let anyone see you. And he's beginning to see that being cold wasn't strength, it was fear. Fear of being seen, fear of being hurt, fear of needing someone. But fear disguised as pride only ever leads to loneliness. And now he's living with the consequences of his own protection mechanisms. He's learning, slowly, that walls don't just keep pain out, they also keep love from getting in. And while he's stuck behind those walls, you're out there building bridges with yourself, with life, with the world. You've turned your pain into power. You've stopped waiting for closure from someone who was never ready to give it, and instead, you gave it to yourself. That's what makes your healing so beautiful. It's not about forgetting him, it's about remembering yourself. You stopped making excuses for why someone couldn't meet you halfway. You stopped dimming your light just to make someone else comfortable. And that decision changed everything. And now he sees that version of you, confident, grounded, unbothered, and it shakes him. Because it's the version he always wanted to see, but never believed would exist without him, and that's what hurts the most. He thought he had to be the source of your strength, but you became your own. You no longer need the validation he withheld, and that realization strips him of the power he once clung to. He may still pretend that he doesn't care, but inside, he's confronting a truth he can't escape, that the love you offered wasn't weakness, it was a gift. And he wasn't ready to receive it. And there's a certain kind of pain that doesn't show on the surface. It hides beneath the laughter, beneath the distractions, beneath the casual tone when your name comes up in conversation. That's the kind of pain he carries now. The pain of knowing he was loved deeply and still managed to lose it. The pain of realizing that love isn't infinite, it needs effort, presence, and humility. He's learning quietly that the ones who love you most won't always stay if you make them feel small. And that realization doesn't come with fireworks. It comes in silence, the kind of silence that stretches through every part of his life now. And he's noticing how empty temporary affection feels, how meaningless it is when someone says all the right things but doesn't mean them. He's noticing that the chase doesn't excite him anymore. Because once you've experienced a connection that felt like home, everything else feels like a hotel room, temporary, unfamiliar, and never quite enough. He used to think love was about intensity. Now he knows it's about consistency. It's about showing up even when you don't feel like it. It's about listening when it's uncomfortable. It's about staying when your ego tells you to leave. And he's finally learning those lessons through loss. And he'll keep going, of course. He'll keep building, keep living, keep pretending. But every now and then, something small will remind him of you. A phrase, a scent, a song, and he'll pause. Just for a second, because in that moment, he'll feel the weight of everything he lost. Not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet, aching kind of way that sits in your chest and doesn't leave. That's how he'll carry you, not as a wound, but as a lesson. A reminder of what happens when you mistake love for weakness and silence for indifference. And in maybe one day, when he's truly ready, he'll love again differently this time. He'll show up. He'll listen, he'll care. He'll remember the things you tried to teach him when you were still there. But even then, a part of him will always remember you, not because he wants to go back, but because you were the turning point. You were the moment he realized what real love demands: presence, vulnerability, and courage. And though he lost you, you'll always be the echo that reminds him of what it means to truly feel. And it's strange how time changes the way people see things. In the beginning, he told himself he was fine. He convinced himself that you were just another chapter, a fleeting part of a story that would continue without pause. But months later, he started to notice that the things that once made him feel alive no longer do. The thrill faded. The noise that once distracted him started to feel hollow. And in those quiet moments when there's no one around, he starts to admit to himself what he's been denying all along, that losing you wasn't just about losing a person. It was about losing the part of himself that only existed when he was with you. And because love has this way of bringing out versions of us that we didn't know existed, you brought out his softness, his warmth, his depth, and when you left, those parts went with you. He tried to find them again in conversations, in places, in people, but they never returned the same. Because they were tied to something real, something honest, something unguarded, and that's what he misses the most. Not just you, but the version of himself that existed when you were near. The version that felt alive, open, capable of love without fear. That's what the coldness took from him, the ability to feel without pretending, and he thought detachment would make him strong, that acting like he didn't care would keep him safe. But safety has a cost, and he's realizing that in trying to protect himself from pain, he also protected himself from joy. He's realizing that indifference doesn't heal you, it empties you. And now, all that emptiness echoes back with your name written on it. Every new experience feels muted compared to the vibrance you brought into his life. Every conversation feels surface level. Every smile feels borrowed. And though he tells himself he's moved on, there's a quiet truth that keeps whispering he hasn't. Because you can't move on from someone who changed how you see love, and he sees you now from a distance, happier, freer, glowing with peace, and he knows that your glow isn't about someone else. It's about you finally remembering your worth. You no longer pour your energy into trying to prove it. You simply live it, and that realization cuts deeper than he expected. Because once upon a time, you looked at him like he was your safe place. Now, you've become your own. He can see it in your posture, in your silence, in the way you no longer react. You used to fight for him, now you fight for yourself, and that quiet shift has more power than any words you could ever say. And every so often, he imagines what it would be like if he could go back, if he could rewrite the moments he wasted on pride, on pretending, on staying distant, when all he really wanted was closeness. But time doesn't grant second chances that easily, and even if it did, he knows deep down that you're no longer waiting for him to change. You've moved past needing an apology. You've found peace in acceptance. You've realized that closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you create when you decide to stop reopening wounds. And that's what truly breaks him, knowing that you healed without him, that the story you once shared now exists only in memory, and he's the one who turned it into the past. And he's learning now that love requires risk, that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's strength. It takes courage to stay when it's easier to run. It takes maturity to communicate when your instinct is to withdraw, but he didn't learn that until you were gone. You tried to show him through your patience, your forgiveness, your effort, but he mistook all of that for permanence. He thought love would always be there waiting, and now he understands that love doesn't wait forever. Love is fragile when neglected, and the saddest part, he didn't lose you because you stopped caring. He lost you because you finally realized that caring alone isn't enough. And he remembers how you used to believe in him, how you saw potential in him even when he couldn't see it himself. You believed he could love better, be better, open up more deeply, but belief alone can't change someone who refuses to confront their own fears. You poured into him until you were empty, and he kept taking because he thought there would always be more. But when you finally stopped giving, when you finally stepped away, that's when he understood the weight of what you had given all along. You weren't asking for much, just honesty, consistency, effort. And now those same things he once overlooked are the things he can't stop craving. And he's surrounded by people, yet he's lonelier than ever. Because it's not about having company, it's about having connection. And connection doesn't come from shared interests, it comes from shared vulnerability. You offered that. You gave him a space where he didn't have to perform. And in return, he gave you distance. He built walls where there should have been bridges. He thought space would give him power. Instead, it gave him perspective. Because now, from behind those walls, he can see clearly what he destroyed. And sometimes, when he's out somewhere at a restaurant, in a crowd, driving down a familiar road, he'll catch a flash of a memory. You laughing across the table, the way your hand fit perfectly in his, the way your eyes softened when you looked at him. Those moments return like ghosts, not to torture him, but to remind him that real love existed once and he let it slip away. And that realization doesn't leave, it follows him, It's not the loud kind of heartbreak, it's quiet. It's the ache that lingers in the background of every good day, the kind that reminds you that something beautiful once lived here, and he's starting to see now that you weren't asking for him to be perfect, you were asking for him to be present. You didn't want grand gestures or promises written in words. You wanted consistency. You wanted someone who showed up when it mattered. And now that he's finally ready to give that, there's no one there to receive it. Life has a way of teaching through timing. Sometimes the right lesson comes after the opportunity has already passed. That's the kind of pain that doesn't go away with time. It just becomes a quiet understanding. The understanding that sometimes we meet the right person at the wrong level of ourselves. And in that realization, he's finding humility. For the first time, he's learning what it means to take accountability, not through apology, not through words, but through silence, through sitting with the weight of what he's done and understanding that this is what growth feels like. It's uncomfortable, it's humbling, it's lonely, but it's real, because love doesn't just change the person who receives it. It changes the person who loses it. And now, when he looks at love, he sees it differently. He no longer confuses control with strength. He no longer mistakes distance for independence. He's learning that true love doesn't make you feel small, it makes you feel safe. He's realizing that being vulnerable isn't about losing power, it's about sharing it. And even though he learned it the hard way, it's shaping him into someone different. Someone who might finally be capable of giving the kind of love he once pushed away. But even as he grows, he knows that what you two had can't be replicated. It was one of those connections that leaves fingerprints on your soul. It changes how you see yourself, how you see others, how you define love. And that's what he carries now, not just the pain of losing you, but the gratitude for having known you. Because in losing you, he found a truth that will never leave him, that real love doesn't fade, it transforms. It teaches, it breaks you open so you can finally understand yourself. And that's where he is now standing in the quiet aftermath, holding onto the lessons your love left behind. The coldness he once wore like armor has melted away, replaced by something softer, something real. He still doesn't talk about it. He still hides it behind smiles. But every once in a while, in the stillness of his thoughts, he feels it, that echo of what was, that ache of what could have been, and the unspoken truth that losing you wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of his awakening,